Okay, the first time that I locked myself in there, I wasn't sure that you could get out. And the phone was on the tripod, I was in the thing. Turns out all you have to do is push these latches, because this mechanism goes all the way, up and down the doors, and the latches respond to one another, thankfully. So anyway, if you're new to the channel, welcome. This is a place that intends to shed some light on the mysterious subject of furniture from the past, and to help you understand really what types of it are most valuable and why. I find that that information is not quite as readily available as it should be. And we do deal with pre-industrial period pieces here. So this is a specific type of furniture from the past, which is the most artistic, most valuable type of furniture from the past. And this very much differs from post-industrial sort of copies or reinterpretations, machine-made most of the time, of these original pieces. Now, as you may have guessed, the star of today's show is this 300-year-old monumental armoire from the city of Lyon. Now, this is a piece which is kind of speaking for itself here. It's one of the best parts about a true piece of art furniture is that it does sort of speak for itself. But if we wanted to get into some of the details, we might first say that this is really an emblematic piece of furniture that is representative of the highest quality in furniture production from this very singular and memorable region or city in the history of furniture. And so when we look at Lyonnaise furniture, right away looking at this piece, we can see why it has kind of gone down in history as a special type of furniture, and these armoires specifically have gone down as some of the grandest pieces of furniture ever created. So when we look at Lyonnaise furniture, we're really looking at the triumph of the woodworker, right, or the sculptor. This is not a veneered piece like many fine pieces that come from Paris or from other non-Parisian cities like Grenoble or Montbéliard, where there were veneer artists who would make a frame and then apply veneers. This is a solid piece in Lyonnaise walnut, and one of the most charming things is that as you approach one of these grand master woodworking pieces, you come along and you pan your vision across and you'll see that it's actually undulated, that it's not flat, despite the real perfection of the lines and the quality of this piece. It's actually minutely very imperfect because the woodworker's tools, the hand planers, leave these undulations, these subtle traces of how it was made by hand. And so that's one of the most charming things that I think you might see right away. All right, so now that we've established that Lyonnaise furniture is really the triumph of the woodworker or the sculptor, one of the things that Lyonnaise furniture is most remembered for is really being one of the most powerful and grand expressions of this curvilinear rococo style in furniture history. Now, this is a style which is movement-driven, it's asymmetrical, it brings the beauty of nature indoors, but normally this style is quite a bit more feminine. And what's interesting about the Lyonnaise expression of the rococo style is that we see that just as the beauty of nature can be brought indoors, the force and the intimidating side of nature can apparently be brought indoors with this style as well. So that's one of the first things that we appreciate about Lyonnaise furniture. It's this very fully developed, bold and singular expression of the rococo style. Now, the materials used to do this here were used in abundance. We have quite a profuse amount of Lyonnaise walnut being used here, which leads us to the next most recognizable aspect of Lyonnaise furniture. It's simply this brownish, reddish hue that this wood develops over time with patina. So we have this wonderful expression of the rococo style. We have a very eye-catching reddish-brown walnut that's being used. And then, concomitantly with both of these features, we have these very powerful moldings which frame the doors. In French, they refer to this as large framed armoire doors, des portes à grand cadre, I think. And we can see that these moldings here are thicker and they are more pronounced than the moldings of most doors on armoires from other regions. So we have these enormous moldings, and then we have also large but smaller moldings which frame the three typically curvilinear panels of a Lyonnaise armoire. And it's this middle one here, which tends to be particularly curvilinear, particularly scrolling, that is most singular to this Lyonnaise furniture. And then of course, the final, one of the most striking features of a Lyonnaise armoire is this wonderful rococo shell here that deploys forward. Now, these armoires are known for having very large-scale shell emblems that sort of preside over the doors. This one is actually an architectural motif called a miroir in French, and it's a sort of convex blank herald, which here is shrouded in a sort of rococo shell. And it is an architectural motif that you'll see on the front pediments of buildings. So here, you sort of have a typical Lyonnaise rococo stylized shell, but also of a miroir, this emblem from architecture of the French Renaissance, which you would find on Renaissance period buildings in the city of Lyon, for instance. But with regard to this one specifically, take a look at these wonderful oak sprigs, these leafy sprigs of oak, which are full of acorns that deploy from either side of this shell. That's a particularly charming, motif. There might be something spiritual about it. It reminds us that a mighty oak comes from a small acorn, right? So now that we've discussed some of these distinguishing features of Lyonnaise furniture of the 18th century, this really exuberant Rococo style in this reddish brown mountain walnut, which is, mind you, very dense and resistant to insect attack. So that's part of what allows these massive pieces to traverse time so successfully, is that the wood is very dense to begin with. So we have this Rococo style, we have the walnut, we have these powerful moldings, and then we have these singular curvilinear panels that decorate the doors. And so the next characteristic or really outstanding trait of Lyonnaise furniture from this period is the metalwork, within which we're going to see something that is just as sturdy, just as powerful, just as impressive as the piece itself. And we can start with these blackened hinges, which are, quite large, but they're also typical of these grand Lyonnaise armoires. But we'll see here on these that the hinge has been decorated with this central bauble, which gives each hinge the appearance of actually being two hinges. So these are called doubled hinges. It's just a decorative touch that makes us believe that there are actually two hinges, 6 hinges per door, when of course there are just 3 hinges. And then moving right along on the subject of metalwork, the keys here are very much specific to the region of Lyon. They are triangle keys with an S shape, and you'll see that the keyhole when the key is out is this sort of eye-catching triangle here. The lock itself is just as interesting as what it locks shut, right? So we have this little decorative emblem here, which is an added touch of quality. And then exceptionally on this lock, we have the signature of the locksmith who lived from 1689 to 1754. His name was Pierre Calonier, and he would sign his locks P. Calonier in 2 lines. And, this is just really exceptional because it's very rare to find signatures on pieces that predate the French law, which required for tax purposes the signing of one's furniture output. That's very rare. But then it is also very interesting to see how this signature suggests that this maker understood that the locks he made were exceptional, right? And so that's one of the trends, one of the elements of this type of furniture is that people in the 18th century were aware that their furniture was, and as it still is, exceptional, and there was pride of ownership, and there was clearly pride of creation on behalf of the makers, whether it was the locks with these beautiful mechanisms that span the top of the doors, or whether it was the master furniture maker and his workshop to which we owe this beautiful piece today. They were proud of what they made. So this lock protects your belongings, and then the second door here has an interesting mechanism which is operated by simply pulling down here, and as you pull down on this knob, it will work the latches at the top and the bottom of the doors. And all of this is taking place with beautifully irregular and slightly asymmetrical pieces of metal that are all grooved and screwed together, sometimes with little hand-forged nails. You know, so it's amazing that this metalwork is still here on the piece. And so not only is this metalwork sort of important to the story of Lyonnaise furniture because it's very specific in style to Lyonnaise furniture, but it's also pretty important to the value, to the integral value of an 18th century armoire. For some reason, some horrible reason, a lot of these pieces are missing their original metalwork, and so it's just important that collectors understand and see what kind of metalwork a complete armoire should have. I'm not going to say that everyone will necessarily have one that's signed by this random locksmith who signed his work, but this really does give you an idea, whether it's a signed lock or not, of what a lock on a piece of Lyonnaise fine furniture like this should look like. And so, really, before we conclude the video, which I hope you've enjoyed, I wanted to give you a quick view of the inner shelf of drawers, which was unfortunately cut apart at some later date after this was made in the 1730s, because you'll see some of the hidden parts of the joinery on these drawers, and you'll see the hand-forged nails which sort of charmingly hold them together. Now the facade of the drawers is in the same sort of beautifully striated walnut that we see on the exterior, but the sides of the drawers are made in less noble wood, pine here, and that's part of this 18th century idea that why would we go to the trouble to using noble woods and to beautifully finishing hidden, more functional structural parts of the piece. And unfortunately the key is missing from the drawer. What was part of a contiguous drawer shelf, now having been cut into two drawers. What would have been probably the right drawer has a beautiful lock, the key of which is missing. But nonetheless, it's kind of cool to have these original parts of the piece, even if they have been modified. So anyway, all this to say, this is a beautiful piece of furniture here, and part of the channel's goal is to simply preserve a trace of these artifacts as I encounter them and as they spend a very short period of time with me. And I hope that this will be a nice addition to our repertoire of period pieces, which will not only preserve the pieces for however long the internet lasts, but I do hope that this will help you develop a collector's eye for pieces of furniture from the past which are from this moment in art history when furniture was made by hand, when it was made when the style in question was invented, and which is the most valuable when it comes to collecting or simply buying a piece from the past for your home or for your business space. So I hope that you've enjoyed checking out this venerable and really exemplary trace of luxury furniture from the city of Lyon, as this is truly a book-worthy or a museum-worthy. If we wanted to talk about the Lyonnaise Museum of History or the Lyonnaise Museum of Fine Art, this is a really wonderful example of Lyonnaise 18th century furniture. So if you'd like to support me in that goal of continuing this video repertoire of period pieces, please like the channel or like the video and subscribe to the channel, and leave any questions you might have in the comments below. Thank you.